today's technology is tomorrow's trash, and Australia adapts technology faster than any other nation. We have more mobiles per capita than anywhere else in the world, more mobile phones. The enemy has plans for our children. The question is, do we? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying today, throw out the mobile phone, throw out the digital technology and shut yourself off from the world. We can't do that. We live in the world we are in, and technology is good. I have my iPhone, I have my iWatch, I have my iPad. I have technology. But we need to look at what is happening to, especially to our children, and why the teen and tween brain is particularly vulnerable to this, and how we parent in this space. It reminds me of, when I look at technology and what's in our media-saturated world, these two verses come to mind. Be still and know that I am God. When do we find time? When do our kids find time to be still, to be bored? When my kids come and say to me, I'm bored, I'll say, that's good. Creativity comes out of boredom. But with all the noise that is in our world today, what we call the white noise, technology, and the blue light, which technology emits, and what they find online, when do we find time to be still and know that I am God? And this verse comes to mind: be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. The enemy has plans for our children. The question is, do we? When it comes to technology and mobile phones, teens spend, according to the latest research, an average of 7 hours and 22 minutes on their phones daily. Tweens are not far behind, aged 9 to 12, are not far behind at 4 hours and 44 minutes. Or just last week I read where that's now creeped above 5 hours that our tweens spend on a mobile phone. This amount of screen time, by the way, does not include time spent on schoolwork, online reading, or listening to music. That doesn't include those amounts of time. And this is in Australia. They say 32% of teens say they read for pleasure less than once per month, and 69% of teens watch online videos. Where does most of the teen-tween learning come from? From YouTube, although TikTok is now catching up and is almost about to take over as we flick through and look at videos and dances and moves and mind-numbing, wall-to-wall entertainment. By age 11, 53% of kids have a smartphone. You also had a quick another presentation, I don't think I'll do it today, but by the age of 11, 90% of our kids, if they have a smartphone, have been exposed to pornography. And it's not just what we might call soft pornography, hardcore, violent pornography. By the age of 12, 69% have a mobile phone. And it's interesting that most kids get their smartphone from their parents, because we want to upgrade to the latest. And so we hand our phone that still works, functions perfectly, to our kids, and we pay for it. Literally, we have a smartphone. And I was talking to friends this recently at a church here in Sydney. One mother, my kids are under pressure, peer pressure, to have a phone. It's to fit in. To fit in, have a smartphone. How old was she? Her daughter was 5, just started. And to have a smartphone was with 5-year-olds. And the pester power of wanting a smartphone in with her class on a 5-year-old child. And I was told by the audience that was not uncommon with kids coming home with the pester power to have a smartphone to keep up with the Nokia. The Nokia is still available. It's a phone. It has a snake game on it. Or those that are old remember the snake game. It's still available, the good old Nokia, and it's actually increasing in sales as both parents buy them for their children and for themselves. If your kids need a phone, you can buy a Nokia. It's a flip the job. Do your kids really need a smartphone? That is the question that each parent needs to ask. Most time online is spent consuming and passive viewing rather than creating own content. If your teen is creating their own content through suites available, graphic design, or creating music, or creating their own content, nothing. It's creativity. And they're not consuming, they're creating, and there's a big difference. But when it's mind consuming, social media or gaming, yes, we have 1 in 4 teens are receiving sexually explicit text emails in Australia. At least 1 in 7 are sending text to other people. More than 1 in 10 teens are forwarding sex without consent. About 1 in 12 teens have had sex they've sent forwarded without their consent. 53% of young Aussies report being cyberbullied. Now, the thing is with bullying, yes, it exists. Often it was in the playground, it happened at school. The kids were able to go home overnight, face it again next day. But with cyberbullying, online bullying, it is 24/7, it is constant, and it is probably far worse than what they face in the playground. 79% of children aged 10 to 18 have been bullied on YouTube. Only 21% of Australian teenagers harassment to an institution. Less than half of Aussies teens that were bullied online spoke to their family or friends about it. Female victims are young women aged 18 to 24. 37% of women felt physically threatened on the internet. 70.9% of cyberbullying cases in Australia were racially motivated. Facebook disabled more than 1.3 billion fake accounts in 2020. 30% of cyberbullying victims had experienced harassment in their school, and 2019, or 42.4% of Aussies teens reported that they had witnessed cyberbullying. So it's something that is occurring, it is rampant, and our kids are less likely to talk about it and often suffer it alone in their bedrooms. And once again, I say the enemy has plans for our kids. The question is, do we? David Gillespie, he's an Australian lawyer, and he spends his time researching and then publishing. He wrote the book on sugar poison, for those that remember back a few years ago, and his wife came to him and said, I want you to look at what's happening with technology to our kids. His wife challenged him. So he spent time researching all the research and looking at what was going on with our teens. This book, Teen Brain, is well worth picking up in a bookstore. We wanted to have a look deeper into what's going on, but we'll go over the surface of that today. But Gillespie says in a nutshell, here's what I found. And you want to hear a summary of his book, then if you go to Conversation, Idler about 2 years ago now, you'll find an interview there which summarised the book in an hour if you want to do it while you're driving. But he says the biology of puberty makes the teen brain uniquely fragile. And look at why in a moment. It makes teens susceptible to addictions that lifetime and usher in mental illness. For some reason, in Australia, the mental health of our girls and also our boys, more so our girls, our teen girls, rose by 60% in the year 2010 and since then. And you look back at what happened in 2010, it was when smartphones and social media and technology became readily available in our hands. And there's a correlation, the study's been done right now, but mental health has skyrocketed 60% since the year 2010. Now, there's probably a number of things around that, in that we are more online, less likely to go outside, less likely to exercise, less likely to get the sun that we need, the bright sun that helps with happiness, all those things, but it's also correlated with this being placed into our teens' hands. David Gillespie says, parenting is much more permissive, and this is what I'm not saying this, he's saying this, and parents need to harden up to save their kids. He says, unfettered access to screens is driving an epidemic of addiction, depression and anxiety, the likes of which we have never witnessed before. This is what he found in his research, Australian lawyer. What I found was frankly terrifying. In less than a decade, we've totally changed the future of the human race, and we've done it without so much as a backward glance. In his other book he wrote alongside this book called The Brain Reset, he said, just like with sugar, most Australians are now addicted to some form of electronic dopamine stimulator. It might be sexual porn, it might be approval porn, social media, it might be danger porn, which he calls gaming. By the way, when it comes to approval porn, girls are more likely to become addicted to that than to gaming, and boys are more likely to become addicted to what we call the danger porn, which is a near miss and going on an adventure online, and become addicted to that. If you haven't heard the game Fortnite, then have a look. Fortnite is still one of the biggest games that our kids are playing. It goes about 20 minutes, but kids often play for a minimum of 4, 5, 6, 7, and some play all night, if they're allowed to, because some of the best players are on the other side of the world. And so they stay awake to play the best players. But the addiction is there, and so are the consequences. Anxiety and depression in teens has doubled in the decades since these dopamine stimulators became part of every teenager's life, and the rest of us are catching up fast. The enemy has plans for our children. The question is, do we? This book by Dr. Anna Lemke. We are living in a time of unprecedented access to high reward, high dopamine stimuli. I'll discuss a bit more about why that is happening in a moment. drugs, food, news, gambling, shopping, gaming, texting, sexting, Facebooking, Instagramming, YouTubing, tweeting. The increased number, variety and potency are staggering. The smartphone is the modern, this is what she says, is the modern day hypodermic needle delivering digital dopamine 24/7 for a wired generation. So let's look at the teen brain for a moment and why the teen brain is particularly vulnerable to what we're seeing happening today in our world. The brain begins to develop in utero during the 3rd week of gestation and is complete by the age of 25. Huge implications for parenting. Notice 25. When do kids get their licence? When do we as a society say that our kids become an adult? When do we as parents back off and say, I don't really have much ability to influence you anymore, you're on your own? Yet insurance companies, for some reason, charge a higher premium until the age of 25, because they know that a teen is more likely to have a serious accident, if not kill themselves, by driving a car, whatever else. They will not give good insurance premiums until the age of 25, when research says the brain is fully developed. And often, when it comes to technology, we as parents say, well, I don't understand it. I don't. If I want to fix my phone, I ask a 12-year-old, because they can do it in a matter of minutes. Here you go, Dad, you've done this wrong, do this, do that. There you go, Dad has fixed again. Ask a 12-year-old. For the first time in our world, our kids know more about something than we do because they're born into a technological world. And it almost seems like they know. Smartphone, they know how to swipe by the age of 2. They know how to find their way into their apps that they want to find. For some reason, they even know how to crack the code and get into the phone and do what they want to do. I've seen kids do it at the age of 2, my niece, and knew her way around the phone. It's interesting that pacifiers, that's dummies used for babies, for the first time since they were invented, have decreased in sales markedly, because this is a better pacifier for our babies. And parents now hand their kids a mobile phone when they want some quiet and some peace. In fact, some of the modern day strollers have a holder on the handle for the parent to put their mobile or their iPad, and a holder inside to put the mobile or the iPad for the baby to watch. And yet common sense media and most people say, the most research say, don't let your kids get anywhere near screens until at least the age of 2, and then very minimal. But yeah, the modern day strollers are adapted for a technological generation. And yet at the same time, one of the key ways to raising your children is eye contact and bonding. And yet this is getting in between the mother and a father and their baby, interrupting bonding. Okay, so from birth to 18 months, the brain triples in size to 75% of its adult size. It grows more slowly to 90% of its size by the age of 11. Neurons, synapses are connected, and pathways are being made that become increasingly hardwired. As the saying goes, with this from the age of 11 into the tween years, use it or lose it. We need to stimulate our kids to a wide variety of opportunities and learning, the physical, the mental, the social, the spiritual. All of those need to occur with these rich experiences. We want to grow our kids' brains into an awesome brain that reaches its full potential. The teenage years occur. Massive synaptic pruning occurs because the brain's now moving from its teen years, its childhood years, and it's preparing for the adult years. And so what the brain does, it begins to look at how to be more efficient. And so it looks at what is being used and what is not being used and begins to shut down those neuron pathways and synapses that are not being used. So if your child is a couch potato, then okay, it needs to have the brain to be on the couch all day, so we'll shut down that and shut down that and shut down that to allow this couch potato to be a couch potato. Now, don't get me wrong, neuroplasticity is really good and the brain has ways of regrowing and growing, but some of them make the brain more efficient. So your teenager, parents, is going to take their lunch or forgets about the time and, yeah, they become vulnerable and confused. This is natural. With the teen years, there's disorganisation and there is massive mood swings. Very normal for a teen. And I remember saying when my girl went through this, where's my Madison gone? My beautiful, adorable, happy Madison. I remember an older member saying, just hang in there, Dad. Strap yourself in, lean in, and be there. Be there. Keep showing up. Your Madison is in there and she will come back. It says these go out the window and won't return until the age of 18 years. So parents, your child will go through this. It's very normal. They know that they're vulnerable. They know they're forgetful. They know they're confused. And sometimes we as parents want to nag even more and often, we wonder what's going on. It's normal. Your teenager's brain is changing itself into the adult brain. And it's now, when we want to run away and leave our daughter or son in their bedroom, in their cave, we want to retreat, but we as parents need to lean in, especially in these years. Why is the teenage brain vulnerable? There's what we call myelin, a white matter that grows like a sheep around the axons and neurons. For adolescents, this means that the pruning down of existing neurons and the laying down of myelin sheaths, connecting the remaining linked neurons, which is what we call the beginning of the hard wiring. Melatonin, a neurotransmitter that regulates sleep-wake cycle. Once puberty begins, melatonin release declines. In other words, the sleep-wake cycle is interrupted because the melatonin is declining during the teenage years. Add in social media use, gaming, screens, when we know that the white noise and the blue light interrupt sleep patterns. And a parenting tip, if you want your child to get to sleep, or even yourself, remove this from the bedroom, number one. Have a central docking station where it gets plugged in. Don't allow mobile phones in the bedrooms. For all of you, have a central docking station where it goes, it gets plugged in, that's where it stays. And preferably have your teen offline and yourself an hour before you want to go to sleep. That allows the circadian rhythms, the melatonin, etc., to rise, and allows you to go into sleep phase. The biggest tip for parents is don't allow these or the iPad or the computer in the bedroom. And if your child is doing homework, there's a main frame, a main screen where they can do it in the lounge room. And what they've found is that when your child sees pornography or other things that they shouldn't be seeing, if it's in a central room, and if you have a strong relationship with your child, and if you're able to talk about what they've seen together, the effects of that on the brain drops significantly just by having those conversations. So I say to parents, buy the best mainframe system that money can buy with all the bells and whistles, and keep it updated, because kids gravitate to the best technology in the house. They gravitate to the best technology. So I've paid the money to have the best mainframe that money can buy available in the lounge room, where I can see what's going on, or my wife can, and have those conversations. Here's the thing. You think your child is doing homework, and when you walk into the room, it looks like they're doing homework. But behind that screen is a chat with a friend. And another screen is a video they're watching. And another screen, there's an app, looks like a calculator. There's actually a photo vault, a secret photo vault behind a calculator. There's all sorts of apps that teens know about where they can hide the stuff, and are very good at, when the parent comes in the room, flick back to the homework. Now, back when I was a kid, you talked for 3 hours on the rotary phone and often got yelled at by the parents, get off the phone. But the rotary phone was a mode of connection. We are a wired generation, your kids connect. But know that when they say they have homework, it's often on the front screen when you're there and not there when you're not there. And our kids know very well how to hide what you don't want to see. The enemy has plans for our children. The question is, do we? Let's talk about dopamine. This is the feel-good chemical. It makes us want to do things like eat food and drink. In fact, they took away the dopamine stimulator out of the brain of a rat. And the rat sat there and it wouldn't eat, despite having food in front of it, because there was no dopamine. Dopamine makes us want to get up out of bed and do things, but also fires a response when we're in danger for the fight-flight mode. So when things are dangerous, the dopamine kicks up. Once we get a reward, serotonin is released. Now here's the thing. During teenage years, dopamine levels are at their highest. Now let me try and explain this. Every time you get a little ding on social media where it's a heart, is the best way to addict all of us. And so you keep going back and playing it again and again and again, because you want that, the brain wants that dopamine hit. And so if dopamine is at its highest when they're teens, your brain is constantly setting itself higher and higher and higher. You want more and more and more of that thing. Now, the designers particularly design these phones and design those games to make you want to stay online and play for longer and longer and longer. Because they know then that you'll see ads, and when they play ads, it generates money for them. So it's all about keeping you online and seeing those ads, and you just keep on going and going and going. And before you know it, you spent your 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours online without even realising it. Dopamine is a wonderful thing, but when it comes to screens, There's a huge danger lurking right there. So with teenagers, dopamine is at its highest, but serotonin kicks in once you've got the dopamine release and makes us feel calm and relaxed, especially when we feel wanted. Facebook, important, gaming, and proud, the near miss or winning, or helping your mates in that Fortnite game. Serotonin affects mood fluctuations, anxiety, and impulse controls. Serotonin also plays a powerful role in our moral judgment, decision-making, and moral behaviour. Now, in teenage years, the dopamine is at its highest, but there's a temporary drop of serotonin, which balances out the dopamine in the teenage years, which is why the teenage brain is vulnerable. Then there's oxytocin, more so for girls than for boys, but it works for both. Reward for bonding with others. It stimulates the release of dopamine and serotonin. In addition to dopamine, oxytocin facilitates bonding and makes social connections more rewarding. With both dopamine and oxytocin engaged, it is no wonder that adolescents seek peers and excitement in their lives that could end up actually harming them. Then there's this one, GABA. It's a neurotransmitter. Its full name is GABA aminobutyric acid. That is the inhibitor or the braking system in the brain. In other words, as an adult, we know when we've played an hour online, it's time to stop. Get offline and go and do something. Go outside and go to the shed or the veggie patch or play with the dog or whatever it might be. The GABA kicks in and tells us when we've eaten enough. Okay, you've now eaten enough, it's time to stop. It's the natural braking system that we as adults have that says you've played for long enough, get offline. With teens, the braking system is removed. Kids will play all night if we let them. Kids don't have that braking system that says enough is enough. And so we as a parent need to be the brakes, especially in the teenage years. Set those boundaries in consultation with your teen as to how long they'll be online and then what they're going to do next, and work with so that you help them to build that braking system as they grow up. GABA calms anxiety and impulsivity and downs. This is why your teen is more prone to addictive tendencies than at any other time in their lives. What Gillespie found and other researchers found is that the same gateway, screen time, technology, is the same gateway in the brain for other addictions as well. And so this can be a gateway drug. Addictive pathways set during this time are hard to break. That's why we need to be the parent. Then the delta phosphate, a sustained molecular switch for addiction. It's a regulatory protein that affects the plasticity of our brain. Once switched on, it remains for a while and doesn't easily go away. In other words, they say after half an hour online, this delta phos B is kicking in, which affects the plasticity of our brain. Like half an hour online. That's why my advice to parents is for every hour your child is online, in your technology agreement with your child, when you hand them their first mobile phone, there's an agreement for every hour online, there is 2 hours offline. There are still chores. Teenagers can do chores. In fact, chores are very good for our teenagers. So there's pack the dishwasher, chop the wood if you have a fire, feed the poultry or feed the dog, take the dog for a walk, let's go get some exercise, find ways to get your teen offline, because I find that 2 hours offline reduces the delta phosphate addictive tendencies and brings it back to reset level. So it's a very easy way to help stop addictive tendencies clicking in. We have the perfect storm: technology, screen time, online porn, gaming, social media, and I haven't talked about artificial intelligence, which is a whole new ball game that's about to descend upon us. What we call deep fake, when you don't know what is truth and what is, when they can make politicians say things they didn't even say. They say that this current upcoming US election will be the last US election fought largely by human against human. The next election will be AI versus AI. Yes, there'll be a face behind that as human, but artificial technology is about to change the world as we know it. And even the creators of AI are saying we need to take a deep breath at what we're about to embark upon, because they're seeing the danger signs. So, what do we do? Maggie Hamilton, a well-known Australian social researcher, said in a few years, kids have become isolated, spending worrying amounts of time on devices and at home. Too often they lack one-on-one attention and touch, creative and spontaneous real-life play, and they have little or no connection with nature. Our children are also losing connection to their family and cultural stories, drowned out by wall-to-wall entertainment and endless mind-numbing details of the vacuous life, leaving them with little to hold on to. What do we do then? Vern Bengtson spent his whole life researching families and faith and how stories and culture and values are passed down from one to the next. And found, when he summarises his life research, spent his whole life with longitudinal research, said the influence within can be more powerful than forces at home, at school, or in society at large. This was the same for both those who were religious and those who were not. Bengtson also found that children are more likely to adopt the values of their parents and act on what they have seen in their parents' relationship with God and each other. In other words, if you want your kid to be off their mobile phone, we need to be off ours. If we want our children to adopt the faith that we have, we need to show them what that looks like. Kids are more likely to adopt the values and faith of their parents, despite everything that's happened in the last 50 years, according to research. That's the good news. It's also the scary news. I don't need to be perfect as a dad, but I need to be authentic and show our kids what that looks like. Christian Smith and Amy Adler said, some readers might be surprised to know that the single most powerful causal influence on the lives of teenagers and young adults is the life of their parents. And this is good news for me. Not their peers, not the media, not their youth group leaders or clergy, not their school teachers. But we, as parents, need to have that relationship with our sons and our daughters. In fact, we need to fight for that right relationship. And if we can grow that from an early age, trumps everything that technology can throw at us and anything else. Myriad studies, according to Christian Smith, show that beyond a doubt, the parents of youth play the leading role in shaping the character of their lives, even well after they are home, and often for the rest of their lives. Furthermore, the parental influence has not declined in effectiveness since the 1970s. That's good news. I can be the authentic dad. I can take my children, and now my grandchild, as of 2 years ago, I can take my children and spend time with them. I can date my daughter. I can continue to, she loves shopping, I hate shopping, but I go for the journey. I want to spend time with my daughter. And my son, we go to the footy. We both love the footy. But again, my son, even though he's now 26, your job or a mum is never done. And by the way, parents have an increasingly significant role to play in this. In fact, when children were asked to describe their grandparents, they described them in research being a little bit God. So grandparents, you are the God influence in your grandchildren's lives. You tell the stories. You tell the stories of generations that have been passed down to you over a slow meal. And it seeps into their bones. Maggie Dent, well-known Australian parenting expert, said, my research showed almost 60% surveyed reported their mum was the most important person during their confusing teen years. So mums, you have a role to play. So what do? Justin Colson says we need needs-supportive parenting, positive and healthy involvement in your child's life. The child feels like she is seen, heard and valued. There are things that need to be in there. I'm going to jump forward a couple of slides. I want to quickly run through 12 to parent in the digital age. Number one, remember, even in technology, you are the parent. You are the parent. You are paying for this in your teen's hand. And especially with this, we need to parent. We need to make the effort to know how this works, educate ourselves, know your way around it, so that you with your teen in the language of what this is all about. Number two, as I said earlier, strap yourself in. Don't the small stuff. Choose the hills you want to die on. Keep the end goals in mind and remain calm. That was the best advice given to me when my daughter suddenly became that moody teenage girl. The best advice was don't small stuff and decide what the small stuff is, but keep the end goals in mind. Number three, the art of conversation. Talk, talk, talk. And if in doubt, talk some more. Develop the art of conversation with your teen. As I said, for me, it was car time because I could keep technology out of the car, including those little white pod things I put in their ears. They're banned in the car. You're driving, they're in the side seat, you're looking out the window, powerful, captive audience conversation. They can't get out. And you talk, and you talk, and you talk. And I take the line. I often, as a dad, was known to get lost because it meant longer time to talk. And on the way to shopping, how are you going, Madison? What's happening at school? Nothing. What's happening with the boyfriend? Nothing. And you get one-syllable answers. But after you've done the shopping, when the children were younger, it was just a sniggle pencil or pencil case or something. Now it's a bit more expensive. But I will fork the dollars, knowing I get the conversation on the way. And it's cheaper than a psychology bill anyway. So on the way home, she starts to talk, and I'm a-haring as she talks about life, asks the hard questions about God, talks about boyfriends. I want to know about boyfriends. Talks about school and the deep things happen. Children spell love as T-I-M. It's hard to find today. The enemy has plans for our children. The question is, do we? Number 4, date your children regularly. Find a shared hobby. We just talked about that. Number 5, make expectations and boundaries are clear and the consequences right from the start, and keep to those. Number 6, respect their boundaries and privacy too. Your teen is growing into independence, and we need to make sure that we respect their boundaries as ours begin to relax. Number 7, I said earlier, model authenticity, what that looks like. Number 8, don't be afraid to get if needed. If your teen is in their room, moody, withdrawn, not responding to normal stimuli for more than 2 minutes, get help. School counsellor, or someone else. Because of those brain pathways being set, we don't want it to go too long. And don't be afraid to if needed. Number 9, schedule regular unplugged time to enjoy being a parent. Things like meals are no-go zones for technology. That includes you, Dad. In our house, all the phones are packed up on the table. In a meal, the first person to take their phone does. It works. I do the dishes, but I'll do them for the benefit of the slow meal and conversation. But work out where in your household unplugged time is a rule that you have. Number 10, the village. The church is the best village to raise your teen or child. Number 11, never give up on fighting for the right relationship with your child. Don't ever, ever, ever give up. Jude talks about impressing children, and the word used is like chipping away at stone is pretty hard to chip away at. Inscribing on stone. That's what parenting is sometimes when you're working with your teen. You feel like working anywhere, but keep chipping away. Never give up on fighting for the right relationship. And number 12, laugh out loud and often, and don't forget to take a break. A weekend away or time